Hello folks, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. And in this video we're going to continue to work on the TVR, and more specifically we're going to install the exhaust manifold as far as we can, because I'm still missing some parts. I've been really unlucky lately with getting parts from the UK because of Brexit, and a lot of the parcels are being returned to the UK. But hopefully by next week we get all the final parts and we can wrap it up completely, at least for the exhaust and the cooling system. But for now, we'll focus on the exhaust itself because there's still a bit of work on it. And this is the old header that we took off in the previous episode, and you can see how that is actually beaten up. So we're going to replace this with a new one. And here is that new header. It's exactly the same, but better quality. And the old one, I guess, that's just something to be thrown away. So let's do that. Nevertheless, the new one is not a stainless steel version. I went for a mild steel type, and I already have it heat wrapped to reduce the heat in the engine compartment. You might wonder why I'm going for a mild steel version and not a stainless steel version. For me, the reason is simple. It is not too expensive, but it all relates to the purpose that you want to use the car for. If you're going to build a car for a racetrack or a competition car, then of course you might want to go for something else. You might want to go for a stainless steel exhaust that's going to give you a much longer longevity, or you might want to go for titanium or even ceramic. Now that's way out of my budget, and I don't need it because I'm just going to use the TVR as a fast road car, and that's all I'm going to use it for. And I'm not going to drive it that much, so that's why a mild steel exhaust or header is more than good enough. So let's have a closer look on that header, because there's a few things I want to talk about. So we're going to need a couple of things to mount the exhaust manifold. We're going to need bolts, and I have two bolts here. This bolt is the one that came out of the old exhaust, and this is the new bolt that's going to go back on there. And as you can see, it's a bit taller, but I'll come back to that in a few minutes. And then of course we're also going to need gaskets. And you can see that I have two types of gaskets here. They actually are the same size, but they came from different vendors. And you can see that this one is a bit cheap. This one is a lot better. So depending where you buy those, you're going to get different quality. And you can actually see it on the way the holes are stamped in it. This is a much better stamping than this one. And I don't know if you can actually see it, but if you look close enough, you will see the difference. And if you were able to feel it, you would feel the difference as well. So I'm not going to use the shiny ones. This is a bit crappy. I got those part of a kit, and this comes from Burton Power. It's just what it is. This I got from the store in the Netherlands, the TVR store. So you now see the difference. On a website, you can't see it. So you always got to be careful. If you look closely, then you will see that the flanges on the new header are thicker than on the old one. And these were the bolts that were fitted in the old header. And you can see how much play there was on it. This is a real big hole. I don't know why they made it that big. So if I wanted to use these bolts on the new header, you see how little they come through. And if you look close on the top of this bolt here, you can see it's been cut out. But also the thread is very thin in the beginning, and then it gets thicker. So it's a bit conic. So therefore, this bolt isn't going down very far. And if I put a washer up on top of it, the bolt is barely getting into the block. So it's not going to hold very well. So I can't use the old bolts. So always pay attention to that. So that's why I'm having a new bolt. This is the bolt. And of course I'm going to put a washer or a locking ring up. But now you can see it's sticking much further through. So that's why I needed to get other bolts with this header. Now the question now is, what type of bolt is it? If you're having to get new bolts, then you have to make sure that the bolt that you get is the right bolt for the right purpose. So let's have a closer look on those bolts. And I know on bolts we could probably talk about an hour on all the different types and sorts and how they're all been marked and classified, but this is not the purpose of this video, of course. But you're more than welcome to make these comments in the comment lines about bolts. The bolt on the right is the bolt that came out of the manifold, and it has a marker on it, 8.8. And that refers to the strength of the bolt. So this bolt, you can tighten it down to about 21 pound-feet, which is more than enough for this manifold. The bolt on the right is something else. You see the three lines on there. There's one line there, There's another line there and another line there, and those 3 lines, they actually refer to a coding schema, and this is an SAE coding schema, and the 3 lines mean that this is a grade 5 bolt, and a grade 5 bolt allows you to torque it down to about 17 pound-feet, and again, that is more than enough for this header to be mounted onto the block, because I only need about 12 pound-feet to lock it down. So this replacement bolt is more than good enough. Both bolts are both made out of medium carbon steel. They have been quinced and tempered. So all by all, this is pretty good. But of course, you can see the difference in shape. This one is having a little cutout here, so it's cutting very well into the metal. But of course, the threading only starts much slower. The new bolt is a bit different. It has threading all the way to the end and on the top as well, so it's different. But it is a good bolt and it will fit properly. And then the next question is, what kind of material should the bolt be made of? Should it be made of copper? And I think copper bolts are not that easy to find, but nuts are. Or should it be just steel? Or should it be steel which is coated, maybe with zinc or galvanized? All kind of choices you have. And people think often that copper is great because it doesn't corrode that fast, it doesn't get stuck in it, so if you have to take off the manifold, it might be easier to undo these bolts. I am going just for a steel bolt which is zinc coated, but I'm using copper grease. Now the name copper grease is probably badly chosen because it's not really intended to grease anything. It's actually intended to prevent parts seizing to each other, and as you can see, this is really looking like copper. So I'm going to put this on the bolts, on the thread, so they don't seize into the block over time. So this is always good. So this is high temperature copper grease, as we call it, or copper paste. I think that's the better word. And before I'm going to install the headers on the car, I'm going to clean the thread inside the block. And for that, I'm going to use a tap, and here is a tap, and I'm just going to turn it into the block where the bolts go in, so that will make my life so much easier once I'm putting the bolts in. Remember that the original bolts were a bit shorter, so the thread further down in the hole may be clogged up. So with that one, I can clean it up. And to use the thread, you use a 5/16-18 tap UNC. Don't use something else, because then you're going to damage the thread inside the block, and then you're further away from home. Then you need to drill it out and re-tap it all. I'm going to put a bit of WD-40 in the old opening, and then we're going to install the tap. Now I might be in the way of the camera because it's not easy to get at. Make sure it fits properly from the start, because otherwise, if you have a bad start, you're going to cross-thread it. And it might actually be easier to just use the tap first without the handle and try to turn it in, like so. And then we can put the handle on and then move it a bit further. Don't force it, just do it gently until it's far enough, until you reach the end, and then just turn it back and remove it. And now the bolt will go in very smoothly, and that's exactly how we want it. Now we're going to do hole by hole, and then until we are done, and then we'll put the manifold up. See how smooth that goes? So let's try one of the bolts. And now that moves in so nicely. So it's a pleasure to turn the bolt in. See how far I can get it. And that should be good enough, because that's about the thickness. Actually, it's less than the thickness of the header flange and the washer, so I'm good. So now I'm going to clean up the remaining thread, and then we'll install the manifold. So all the thread is cleaned up. We made space, so now we're going to take the exhaust manifold and slide it in this way. So let me go and get it. So let's slide it in like this. And that should just fit properly. I hope it fits nicely. Yep, it does. And now I'm going to hold it only with one bolt in place so that I can put the other bolts up just to keep it a bit in balance. Problem is, I should have put my glasses up. Okay, there it is. All right, so now that's hanging, and now it's easy to do all the rest. So I'm having it partially in place now, and just with a bolt pivoting right here, and it's just leaning on that. And let me try to move this a bit around so the bolt can go in a bit better. There we go. So now I'm going to put the seals up here and a bolt, and then I do the back, but I'm not going to tighten it down. This is going to be the last part to do. So this is the way I found it, the easiest way to do it. So I guess we all have our own methods, but this is my method. Maybe it's not the best one, but it works for me. So this is the seal, and pay attention to the form of the seal because it's not a symmetrical form, so you have to make sure that you place it in the right way, otherwise the holes won't fit. So I'm doing the top one first. I'm going to try to move the exhaust, pivot it, and then try to lock that slightly into place. Okay, that's good. I don't need to do more because now I will do the other side with the seal, and then I'm going to put the bottom bolts up and try to push the seals into the right location because they may still swing around a bit. And of course we put a washer up and we put some copper putty or grease on, whatever you want to call it. Not too much. And this will prevent the bolts from seizing to the block over time. There we go. So that's in place now. So now I'm going to do the back one. I'm going to put the seal up, do exactly the same thing, the bolt and the locking ring. And then I'm going to turn it in slightly, and then we're going to continue with the bottom side. And then finally we'll do the last one here, which will remove the bolt again and then put the seal up and then put the bolt back. So I've got all the bolts now in place, and that went very smoothly, and that's just because we cleaned up the thread inside and we have new bolts. And make sure that all your seals are in the right direction because you can turn them in the wrong direction and then they won't fit properly. So now it's a matter of tying them down. Now the normal torque on these bolts is about 1.5 kilograms. Now that you should do when the exhaust is warm. Now I can't do that because I don't have a cooling system up yet, so I'm going to torque them down for now to about 1 kilogram, 1.2 kilogram, and then later on when the engine is hot and I have the cooling system in, I will actually torque them to the final torque. Now some of these are pretty hard to get at, like on the bottom, so you might need some tools that are able to turn in a corner or in an edge, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you call this, like a swivel. There we go. So I'm going to slightly turn it on, not too hard, just a little bit so that it just locks the locking ring or closes the locking ring. And I'm going to do this for all these bolts, one after the other, and then we're going to torque it. All right. It's that one, and some of them are really hard to get at. All right. I'm not using a lot of force, just gently. And the most difficult one is the one there on the bottom. That's a very tough one to get to. You can't put a socket up. So now we're going to torque down these bolts to 1.2 kilograms, and then we should be good. So this is 1.2. There we go. All right, so now let's see. So now we're going to torque them down if we can, because this is a bit difficult. So let's do that. There we go, and that's number one. We'll try the top one to do it the same way. I have torqued down all the bolts, and there's one bolt I couldn't torque down to the proper torque. I had to do a bit of wrench. That's the one all the way in the back there on the bottom. That was a bit tough, but I can't reach it with my torque wrench, so I just did it by hand. But the rest is all down, torqued to 1.2 kilograms, and I'm going to leave it like this, and then once the engine has been running for a while and it's hot, once I have the cooling system in, of course, I'm going to torque them down again to the right torque. But I think overall this looks quite nice and it goes very smoothly. This is not hard to do. As long as you prepare everything like I did, you're cleaning up the tread, you're putting some copper grease up, you try it out, make sure you have the right bolts, then everything goes in very smoothly and it doesn't take very long. So now I'm going to do the other side, and then we continue with the rest of the exhaust. But before that, I'm going to show you a couple of other things, what I'm going to do with the exhaust itself, and then the rest will be for the next episode. I know this is a bit of a short one, but yeah, I have to wait for some parts, so I can't move on as fast as I want. So let's have a look on how we're going to connect the pipes together. Once I install the second header, then we're going to start to install the mufflers. Now, I can't install the complete muffler system yet because I'm still missing these rubber supports. Remember, from the back it broke off, so I went to my local store. They didn't have it available, so I had to order it online. Hopefully I get it tomorrow so we can fix that up. But what I wanted to show you is that normally when we put the mufflers together, we're using spanners for that. So this is the actual rubber that I'm still missing, but that's for tomorrow, I hope. So let me put that aside. If you're putting the muffler together from the engine side towards the back side, you've got to make sure that the pipes that are coming from the engine, so pointing towards the engine, are going inside the pipe here. So this is the female and that's the male. So always make sure that the gas flows from male into female. Otherwise, you might have leaks. Now, to connect the pipe there, you can use different types of spanners. That's the traditional spanner. I guess we all know this one, and this is very good. It really squeezes it together well because it has a very small squeeze surface. But I like to use this kind of a spanner. I think these are real nice and very strong as well. Of course, the touch area is a lot bigger, so sometimes that might be a bit of an issue, but this is not going to leak at all. I like these, so this is what I'm going to use, and then we'll see how good it is. If you have experience with this and you feel that those are no good, then let me know. I can still change it because I have plenty of both types laying around. So that's going to be something for tomorrow, to put all this back together, bolt it together, and then work our way out all the way to the end. So folks, we are nearing the end of this video, and I'm now going to remove the header on the left hand side, put the new one up exactly the same way, and then we are ready for tomorrow to install all the mufflers. And hopefully I can make then a video of installing the mufflers if I have all the parts. It will depend on the parts, but I didn't want to wait that long, so I already made this video on how to install the headers on your car. Thank you for viewing, and I'll see you in my next video. And by all means, please make comments because I'm learning from your comments as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.